Okay. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this morning's or afternoon or evenings or middle of the night presentation, depending on where you're joining us from, is focused on our off-campus apartments or just off-campus living and presented to us by our off-campus life office. So I'm going to turn this over to Lindsay Mason, who will be doing this presentation, and just thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Lindsay, for joining us as well.
Thanks for having me. Hey, y'all, good day. My name is Lindsay Mason. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as the director of off-campus life. So I'm here to chat with you all today about getting you prepared for navigating our housing market in the US. Yeah, one of the big things that I'm assuming, here's some assumptions I have coming in. I'm assuming that you have not moved here yet. So I'm taking the perspective that you are not in the US yet. Some of you might be coming as individuals, moving alone. Some of you might be coming as pairs or partners, and some of you might be bringing kids. So I'll be trying to think about that as I chat with you. One of the biggest things I want to highlight before I jump into my presentation is that if you get on-campus housing, a lot of it is managed for you. People at CSU are proactively reaching out to you, kind of walking you through the steps of what you need to do. If you are living off campus, so you're living with some type of private property manager, the process is very different. You are responsible for finding the housing, contacting the landlord, filling out an application, and getting through the steps. So I just want to be upfront about that it is different than navigating on campus. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to try to watch the chat as I go to see if I can address questions in real time. But I also welcome you. There will be times where I pause and specifically invite in questions because I'm going to change topics and I want to address questions about that topic before I move on. So I welcome you to put them in the chat. I welcome you to raise your hand using, it should be at the bottom of your Zoom, that there is there's an emoji or something where you can raise your hand or you can come off mute. So know that I'll do that. Okay, I see we don't hear well. Maybe there was a problem. I just want to confirm, is everyone having difficulty hearing me?
I can hear you very well. So yeah, maybe the person having the problem, you might need to try connecting again or adjusting your audio settings. We will also be posting this recording after for anyone who can't attend or misses any of it. But Lindsay, it looks like you're good.
Okay. Yaya, in a second here, I'm going to put up my email. If you also want to email me and we can chat individually if you're missing too much of this or if it doesn't come through clear in your recording, if you watch it later. Okay, let's go ahead and move into the presentation. So let me get set up here. Let me do a screen share, but then let me also make sure I can continue to see the chat. So give me just 1 second to get set up here. Here's my chat. Okay, just want to make sure I can continue to see that. Okay, I think I should be good to go here. You all should be seeing something that says off-campus housing options. So again, I work for the office called Off-Campus Life. We do not own any housing or manage any housing, but we help students navigate housing in our off-campus or private market. If you want to take a picture of this includes my office phone number. Ooh, I realized we just moved offices a couple months ago. I realized my old office number on there, 274, we're now down the hall. That's insignificant. Anyways, but it has my office's website and then my direct email. So I'll leave this up for just a second in case people want to take a picture or screenshot that in case you want to follow up with me after. Okay. Let's move forward. Okay, make sure I can click here appropriately. All right, here we are. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is how to find housing in our community. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the specific rules about living in our community. And then I also have a slide added here. I spoke with our lawyers in student legal services. I told them that I was doing this webinar, and I asked them what information would a lawyer want an incoming international students to know from the beginning. So I have one slide dedicated to some unique things that the lawyers want you to know coming in from another country. And then I also will very briefly talk about some big events that we have throughout the year to help with housing. Okay, so to find housing, the first place you want to start is Rental Search. Rental Search is a website that my office manages. This is where people post up apartments for rent, houses for rent, townhomes, condos. Some of y'all might call them flats. So all sorts of properties come up for rent here. You will see that when you go to rentalsearch.colostate.edu, that initial page, if you click find properties, that's open to the public. So if you have family or someone coming with you and you want them to help you look for housing, they can look at those types of postings as well because they're open to anybody. But this is also where you will post, where you will look for roommates or rooms for rent. Those specific pages, rooms for rent or roommates, you have to have a CSU net ID and password. So it's the same system that you use to log into like RamWeb and all your CSU systems. You'll have to log in to look at those. My staff, we look at all the postings before they go live. So you are, in my 5 years of the way that we currently run this site, in over 5 years, we haven't had a scam come through because we're looking at everything before it goes up. So it is way safer than open sites like Zillow or Facebook Marketplace, which we will talk about scams here in a second because those things do happen. So I want to talk about how to help you avoid those. Okay, and then this is also where you can make posts. So let's say you're coming out here as an individual and you're like, you know what, I really just want to find someone that one or two other people, and we go out and find an apartment together. You can post yourself up here as a roommate so people can find you as a potential roommate. Or let's say you found a great 2-bedroom apartment, but you want someone else to live in the second bedroom. You can post up that room for rent on Rental Search. So if you sign the lease for the 2-bedroom apartments, it's yours. You can then post up on our rooms for rent page saying, I have a room available, and people can contact you to then live with you in that second bedroom. So again, this is where you're gonna post you're a roommate or you have a room for rent. It's also where you're searching for roommates or rooms for rent or properties for rent. I see that there is a post in here about for specific populations of international students to post that you're coming. One of my biggest pieces of advice for any student, domestic or international, look all that you can look at all the websites, look at Rental Search, do all the looking you can, but you also need to be posting everywhere that you feel comfortable posting to tell people. The amount of housing that I hear people find because they're like, oh yeah, I told someone I was looking for a room for rent and they knew someone that had an apartment that they were going to be soon looking for someone to fill a room, and then they get connected that way. Or I see Facebook posts come up saying, I'm looking for a place, and then people start jumping in to say, oh, I have a basement that's coming available for rent in a month and I just haven't posted it yet or something. So I really like whoever shared, then Katish, thank you for sharing that post because I want people looking everywhere you can look and telling everyone that you can tell that you are looking for housing. Between those two, just the connections can be significant. So, okay, so look on Rental Search, post on Rental Search. Okay, so there are other ways to find off-campus housing. The first two, the apartment complex list and the property management list, those are items that my office manages. The apartment complex list is a list of a lot of the apartment complexes in town that that you can look at. How far is the apartment from campus? Does it offer furniture? Are utilities included or not? Does it allow pets? Does it have washer dryer in unit, or do you have to go to a laundromat? It gives general cost. The cost can fluctuate. Some apartment complexes fluctuate by the day, how much you'll pay when you sign a lease. But this gives you kind of like a general sense of how much it costs to live there. Now, the apartment complex list does not tell you what's available, but it at least gives you a place to search and then their phone number and website, so then you can start contacting them to ask what they have available, but it helps you narrow down your search. Then the property management list. This list you'll want to look at if you want to live in something that is not a large apartment complex. So if you want to live in a detached house or a condo or a townhome, or maybe a very small, what can feel like an apartment complex, but maybe there's only like 8 units. So it's a really small complex. That's when you're looking at the property management list. The property management list, you will see, we just give you the websites so that you can look at the websites of our local property managers. We can't list all the properties that they have because they have hundreds and there's huge varieties. We can't possibly do that in a condensed way, but we at least give you the website so that you know it's a legitimate company. To get to both of these lists, you just want to go to our main website, which is offcampuslife.colostate.edu, and then hover over housing. That's where you'll see these resources plus others. I'm making notes for myself of stuff I don't want to forget to mention later. Okay, so then there are other areas that people find housing often, but they're not associated with my office at all. So I don't manage these in any way. Facebook Marketplace has an area specific for rentals, so you can look for rentals on there. There are also Facebook groups. So if you go into Facebook and search something like Colorado State roommates, Colorado State University sublets. A sublet is, earlier I mentioned the example, like let's say you find a 2-bedroom apartment, you sign the lease for the 2-bedroom apartment, and then you want to find someone to rent that empty room. What you're actually looking for is called a subletter. You're looking for someone to rent that room, but they're renting it from you because you've got the lease. That's called a sublet. So you can search Colorado State University sublets, Colorado State University off-campus housing. You could search all sorts of stuff in Facebook groups, and there are at least a dozen groups I know of. I see what I believe are legitimate connections being made in there. I do occasionally check those groups to see what kind of posts are coming up. I do see stuff that I think is legitimate, but I also see bots coming through. So just be careful. Someone is, there's some type of bot that's automatically posting something like, look here for housing. This is the best place for housing. If there's a comment that's linking you to something else, don't go to it. I think that is very likely a scam. And then there's a lot of websites you can go to, like Zillow, apartments.com, rent.com, redfin.com, all sorts. If you just Google Fort Collins housing, dozens are going to come up. I also think people are legitimately finding housing on there as well. Here's what I want to caution you though. I also know that scams come through these sites, Facebook, these private sites like Zillow. Let's say, for example, I had a rental in town and I want to rent it to CSU students or to whoever. I might make a posting on, say, rental search. Maybe I put one up on Zillow, maybe I put one up on Facebook Marketplace. So I'm trying to capture like a wide audience. I might also put a for rent sign in the yard of my rental so that as people drive by, they know that that house is up for rent. Maybe they know someone looking for a rental or, whatever, but I'm going to advertise it in a big way. It would be very easy for a scammer to grab all my pictures and make their own posting as if they own the rental. And then let's say you're on Zillow and you see my rental, but you don't see my posting. You see the scammer's posting. You might see the address, you go drive by, you see that I have a for rent sign in the yard. So it all feels like it makes sense. It adds up. So you start contacting that person to say, yes, I want to live there. One of the things that we can help you with in off-campus life, and so can Student Legal Services, we can help you avoid scams. In case I haven't mentioned it, Student Legal Services is a group of lawyers or attorneys located in our Laurie Student Center, one of our main buildings on campus, that can help you with any legal advice or questions or anything for free. One of the biggest areas they spend a lot of time in is landlord-tenant stuff, because almost every CSU student will sign a lease off campus at some point. So it's very common for landlord-tenant issues to come up when you've got 30,000 people living off campus at some point. Anyways, initially, if you were just to email me the posting and say, is this a scam? Initially, I might not be able to tell you, because the initial posting might look very legitimate. And I'm like, well, they've got pictures, the price seems reasonable. Yeah, I saw the for rent sign in the yard. It's once you start communicating with them, that's when the red flags will come up. So things you want to watch out for, if they're asking you to put any type of money down before you've ever toured or seen or talked to the landlord, seen like a Zoom tour of it, anything like that, that's a concern. If they're just refusing to tour it, period, that's a concern. Like, you should always be able to do some type of a tour, even if it's on someone's phone and they're just walking around the property with you. You should always be able to request that. Sometimes they might ask you to send the money in a way that's a red flag. It might be, they might say, okay, the rent is $2,000 a month, but for the first month's rent, I need $3,000, and then I'll refund you $1,000. That would be a red flag. Or most property managers have some type of a website that you submit payment to, or you might do it via Zelle or Venmo or other smaller, like other platforms like that individuals use, because you might be renting. Like, if I had a rental and I'm just a landlord with one rental, I'm not going to pay to work within a big website and stuff. So I might take my rent via Zelle or Venmo. But if a supposed landlord, if they were to say, well, you have to get a money order from this bank and mail it to this address, if it's a really complicated way that they need to get the rent from you, that's also concerning. So do all your communication with the landlord via email, and then you can send me the email and I can read it with you and let you know if I see anything that's a red flag. To be clear, I cannot guarantee that I'll catch every scam, but I might be able to tell you, oh, this is for sure a scam, or something might seem unique to you or off to you, but is actually very normal in our housing market. So I can clarify some things that to me seem normal or to me seem like red flags. Yeah, did I see your hand come up? Yes. Do you want to come off mute? Okay, I'm going to move forward. If you want to put it in the chat, or if you come off mute, I'll stop. But Okay, on our website as well, we also have a couple of resources specifically for international students. So again, if you go to our main site, offcampuslife.colostate.edu, and hover over housing, you will see that there is a specific tab called international students. That will give you a variety of information about living in the US that might be different than other countries. It will also give you a list of property managers that are more set up to take in international folks. They're more cognizant of your needs. They are more prepared for the fact that you might not have a guarantor, which I think I talk about that later, but I'll make sure. So there's a list of property managers for you to start with that are more equipped and knowledgeable and maybe about what your needs will be as you move to the country. We also have a handbook. We have an off-campus living handbook that we produce every year. There is a chapter in that handbook dedicated to international students. That is also, when you hover over housing, there will be a tab that says student handbook. And so you can read about the chapter in there. All of it will be helpful to you no matter what, but we do list some specific needs for international students. Okay, so, yep, I have one more slide about finding housing, then I'm going to pause and see if there's any other questions. A common question that we get in our office is, who are the good property managers? What are the good complexes? Where should I live? And as a government institution, I can't tell you what are good or bad complexes. I can't be biased towards a private company like that. So what we did instead is we built this program that we call the Good Neighbor Program. The Good Neighbor Program sets ethical business standards, and if property managers choose to abide by those standards, they then get recognized as a good neighbor. So I can't guarantee that everyone living at these properties is going to have an excellent experience. I can't specifically recommend them. But what I can tell you is that these 4 complexes listed on the bottom here, 4-Star, The Standard, Rams Village, and Yugo, all of them have committed to abiding by the ethical standards that we have set. So I think these can be complexes for you to consider starting your search at. The Standard, Rams Village, and Yugo, those are all individual apartment complexes. Like it's one apartment complex in town. 4-Star has several complexes. So know that when you look at 4-Star's website, it'll list like 7 different apartment complexes, but all the other ones are just one complex. Okay. I want to pause for a second and ask, are there any questions about how to find housing? Okay, I'm going to go over a few resources that are still related to housing, of course, but it's not about how to find it. So if there are questions that come up, again, raise your hand or put it in chat. One of the things that I keep track of, well, I don't collect the data, but that I look for data about is called a vacancy rate. A vacancy rate is recording how many rental units in a specific area are available or vacant and ready for a new renter to move in at any given time throughout the year. Economists will say that a healthy vacancy rate is 5%, meaning that 5% of your housing stock at any given time, 5% of your rental housing stock is ready for new renters to move in. If you go above 5%, some argue there is too much housing, and if you are below 5%, you don't have enough housing. Fort Collins is a very popular city for people to live in, both because CSU is here, so we're obviously bringing in, between students and staff, about 40,000 people a year. But Fort Collins is also popular for people to live in for a variety of reasons. We have a great outdoor life here. We might have a lot of I don't know, beer enthusiast or musical festival enthusiast that like to be in this town because we have so many breweries. We have a lot of other industries that are in this town for people to come work in. So we're very popular. So at one point, we got down to less than 1% vacancy, which is concerning. That is not, we were way behind on building up enough housing in order to support our population. Our most recent data from the third quarter, I always like to record third quarter because that's when most student leases start in August, which is in the third quarter of the year. And I checked just before this presentation, the third quarter of 2023 hasn't been released yet. So I'm still using data from 2022, but we have been on a good trend for several years where more housing is being built. And we don't have a surplus of housing. So if you are coming in the spring, you want to be looking now and signing now. As soon as you find a place that meets your needs, your budget, it's on a bus line if you won't have a car, or it's whatever it is, you want to be signing now. If you are coming in the fall, you still have some time. You're okay. But you will want to be signing a lease more like February, March. That's when a lot of folks are signing leases that are coming in the fall, which is some of you might be like, wow, I'm not coming for 6 months after that. That seems very early. You're right. It is. And we don't like it here either. But a lot of college towns, it's very common for people to sign leases very early because a lot of people know months in advance if they're coming to the university. So it is early. But if you're coming in the spring, you're looking now, you're signing now. Okay, I also like to look at what is average cost of rent. This is specifically for apartments. Looking at cost of rent for houses is incredibly difficult to be accurate in any way because, apartment complexes, they've got these big units, they're big national companies most of the time. So it's easy to know who's in our community, but houses, so many houses are owned by just what I call like a mom and pop landlord. Like if I said, if I had a rental, I just have one house for rent, it would be very difficult for the city currently to know that I even rent that house. So gathering data about houses is really hard, but at least for apartments, it's ranging between 1,400 up to all the way up to 2,200. You will also find apartments in our community that have 4 and 5 bedroom apartments. We have 4 and 5 bedroom apartments because CSU is here and a lot of students, are willing to live 4 or 5, adults while they go through college. But the state collects this data and so few communities have a university, thus have 4 and 5 bedroom units. They don't even collect the data on it. If you are coming here as an individual and you are planning to live in one of our big apartment complexes where a lot of students live, and you're going to be renting 1 bedroom, which we'll talk in here in a second about that, you're looking to spend probably somewhere between $750 and $900 for that bedroom. But then if you're coming here with a family, you're not looking to rent 1 bedroom inside a larger unit. You're looking to rent the whole unit. And so this is what's on the screen right now is more accurate for what you're looking for. One thing that I know comes up occasionally, let's say you're looking at a 3-bedroom, you find a 3-bedroom apartment and it's got 1 bedroom available inside that apartment. I know sometimes I'll have international families say, okay, so I'll rent that 1 bedroom and that's where me, my wife, and my 2 kids will sleep. In the US, most property managers will not allow you to do that. If they're renting a 1 bedroom inside, they have 1 bedroom available inside, say a 3-bedroom apartment, they're looking for only 1 person to be in that bedroom. So if you are coming here with a family, you should be prepared to be renting a whole unit, not 1 bedroom within a unit. Okay. So there are pros and cons of living inside an apartment complex versus a detached house, or what some people call a single family house. Some of this I don't think is surprising to people. If you live in a big apartment complex, you share walls with people and you'll be able to hear them. If you live in a detached house, you don't share walls with anyone, you are less likely to be able to hear your neighbors. If you live in a detached house, you likely have a yard, so you have some outdoor space. An apartment complex space, you will likely just have shared outdoor space of some sort. But here's the biggest thing I want to highlight is the two different types of leases that you'll see between apartment complexes and houses. You'll see on the left-hand side, I listed pros and cons of rent by the room. So that's getting at these two different types of leases. We have a lot of large apartment complexes, about at least 10, that are near campus, that built themselves near campus and very specifically want to serve CSU students. And they've got studio apartments all the way up to 5-bedroom units, and they expect that groups of students are coming to them to live there. They also allow other people to live there, you know, but they're like 98% students or something like that. Many of them, they built up their complexes where there is a shared kitchen and living room space, but that every bedroom has its own private bathroom. And they do an individual lease, or what some people call rent by the room. So let's say me and two of my friends want to go live in one of these big complexes. We want a 3-bedroom unit, and we're going to share our kitchen and living room space, but we're each going to have our own bedrooms and our own private bathrooms hooked to our bedroom. We go find one. We say, yep, this is the 3-bedroom unit we want to live in. We won't actually sign a lease together. We will all sign our own leases. So I'll sign an individual lease. My lease will say, I am responsible for paying $800 a month for my bedroom and my bathroom. And then I'm sharing the kitchen and living room space. And that's what all of us will sign our own leases. The pros to that, let's say one of my roommates decides to transfer to a different university halfway through the year, and they want to transfer to a different university, and so they want to leave in December. Well, we signed a 12-month lease, because that's most leases, what you're going to find here are 12 months. And the roommate is going to be, they might say, you know what, I need to go, I can't afford this, I need to transfer to a cheaper place, whatever it is. They figure that out with the apartment complex on their own. And if they leave and choose to stop paying the rent on the lease because they never found a subletter or anyone to take over, I'm never responsible for their portion of the rent, even though we share an apartment. I'm never responsible for that. So that is a big benefit, that the financial consequences are not the same. Or maybe my roommate doesn't want to leave, but they just can't afford the rent and they're coming up short every month. The property manager will never come after me to pay for their rent because I didn't sign a lease with them. I only committed to paying my $800 a month. So that's a great benefit. But let's say that roommate does leave. They're like, yep, I'm transferring, I'm out of here. The property manager can put anyone they want in that bedroom, and I'm sharing a living room and kitchen space with them. I'm not in control of who's moving into that bedroom because I'm not signing a lease with them. The property manager puts anyone they want in there. So let me contrast that to the other type of lease. The other type of lease is technically called a group and several liability lease. I'm just going to call it a group lease. The group lease, this is what you will most commonly see at houses, although not all, but most commonly. So let's say me and those two other people, the three of us, we want to live together and we want to go find a house. We find a house, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. That's a very common build in the US, 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. We all sign a lease together, one lease, one group lease. The pro, let's say one of the roommates wants to move out early and we're like, okay, you can go, we got to find someone else to fill it to help us pay the rent. We're in way more control of who moves in with us because the landlord cannot force us to sign a lease with someone we don't want to sign a lease with. So we have way more control. The con, if that roommate, let's say the roommate doesn't want to go, but they can't afford the rent. You can't go to the landlord and say, well, it's my roommate that can't afford their portion. The landlord doesn't care. You're on one lease together. All they care is that they collect their total rent at the end of the month. So if a roommate can't come up with their portion of the rent, you have to. So you have more control in a group lease, but you have more financial risk with the people that you're living with, more financial responsibility as a whole group versus individual leases. You have less control, but you also have way less financial risk or responsibility to your roommates. So pros and cons there. Okay, I'm seeing a couple questions. I'm seeing a couple questions come in. Okay, I'm gonna do this one. It said, the price that we saw in the presentation, is that per month or per semester? Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. That is per month. Per month. Our off-campus private property managers, you will never see them list per semester. They're always listing per month. And then rental differences between on-campus and off-campus housing. Sigh or say, I think I need more details there. If you could type in there what the differences or could be, I mean, a lot. This could run, that could be a lot of information. Yeah, if you have any more, I need a couple more specific questions there. And then price that we saw in the present, oh, nope, sorry. Can you please share specific groups or community sites for apartments near university on room sharing? What I'll do is near the end, I will put some, I'll put some complexes in the chat that are common complexes that our students live in that are near campus. Yeah, but to be clear, I'm not recommending them. I just know that they are near campus and would like offer either be very easy for you to walk or bike to campus or have bus lines or offer transportation to campus. That's where I'll try and focus that. So I'll drop that in a little bit. Okay, and then I see, is on-campus housing as easily available for freshmen? So we do have a requirement at CSU that our first-time freshmen or first-year students are required to live on campus with some exceptions. There are some reasons that a first-year student or a freshman would be allowed to not live on campus. The most common reason they don't live on campus during their freshman year is because they live with family within a certain distance of campus. It used to be a 30-mile. I think now it's been extended out to 60-mile radius. If they live within 60 miles of campus, they're allowed to remain at home and commute to campus. There's also like medical reasons. Maybe a freshman is married or has a kid that they won't be required to live. And when we say required to live on campus, it's in the residence halls, not in the apartments. So we have residence halls, they're dormitories. That's where most of our freshmen are living. Then we have apartments that are owned by CSU. Occasionally freshmen will go in there because of like a medical reason or something, but that is uncommon. So for freshmen, on-campus housing is guaranteed and almost all the time is required. And then it's some sophomores, juniors, and seniors choose to stay on campus, although it's a small percentage. Most sophomores and up move off campus then. Yeah, there is some age limit. It's like if you're over 21 or over 23, I forget which one it is, you are not required to live on campus if you're a freshman. Yeah, there is, I forget the age, but that is another marker for getting an exemption and you're allowed to go off campus. Those questions, I'm not an expert in them because my office doesn't determine whether you are required to live on campus or not. That's Housing and Dining Services. Housing and Dining Services will tell you you have the exemption from living on campus, and then they send you to us to help you find the off-campus housing if you need help. Oh, yeah. Okay, good question. So if there's like, if you have, using your language, a physical challenge, so apartment complexes are required to build a certain percentage of accessible units. That's the language we use in the US. It has to be accessible. And that means like someone living in a wheelchair could live there. So it's got different widths of its doorways and turn radiuses and grab handles and all sorts of different stuff so that they're accessible. They have to have so many of them. And then if you were to go apply to that complex, and let's say there was someone already living in the accessible unit, but maybe they don't actually need the accessible unit, but that's all that was available at the time when they were moving in. If there is another comparable unit, the complex even has to move that person in that complex to the comparable unit so that you can come in and live in the accessible unit. So there are some support systems to help people find and gain access to an accessible unit. What I'm going to do, I would recommend that if you, let me put their email in here. If you are in that type of a situation where you are looking for a very specific type of unit that meets your physical needs, I want you to email Stevie Jorgensen. Stevie works in my office. Stevie is our property manager liaison. So Stevie used to run an apartment complex in town, and then I hired her into my office so that my office could learn from someone who used to run properties, so that it's helpful for us to know what property managers are thinking, what they care about, their processes. So email Stevie. Stevie has way more information about that than I do about how to find a specifically accessible unit. Okay, so I see, so I'm 29. Can I request for not living in the residence halls? Yes, I think the age requirement is like 21 or 23. So yes, if you want to put in that request so that you can live off campus. What is the average distance range from off-campus housing to college? Some of them are literally across the street, like literally like 100 feet from campus. You will find several of them, but you'll find like 10 of them. You'll probably find 8 of them within about a half mile to a mile. And then if you go out 2 miles, then it gets up to like 10 or 12. So I would say there's a lot concentrated around campus. So anywhere from 100 feet to like 1.5 miles to 2 miles. Oh, cost of living on campus versus off campus. Okay, let me come back to that in a second, because that's a good question. Okay, let me come back to that one second. Are graduate students that live on campus? Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, graduate students, you can apply to live in the residence halls, although most graduate students live in the apartments. So yeah, absolutely. We have some university-owned complexes where their main goal is to house graduate students. So yes, absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry. I see OIP is already responding to that. Okay, thank you. Yep, and then yep, and Stevie's email is just up above. Stevie, I'll drop it one more time just in case you missed it. But yep, Stevie Jorgensen. Okay, then whoever's helping me host this webinar, I'm sorry, can you recopy Stevie's email in there? I'm having difficulty copying that down for some reason. So if you could recopy Stevie's email, that would be helpful. Yep. Okay. If I now want to. Ooh. Okay. All right. Let me do the transportation question. Actually, I'll answer the transportation question in a minute. That's one of my topics that I'm going to talk about. Okay. I see this question. If applied now, when will we get a response from on campus regarding allotment? That is a great question for housing. And sometimes housing knows immediately that they're able to place you, which is great. Sometimes they have such a big wait list that they're not going to be able to tell you for weeks. And if you're coming in the spring and you are applying for if you're coming in the spring and you're applying for on-campus housing and they don't know when they'll be able to tell you whether you're able to be placed or not, you should not wait. You need to be looking for off-campus housing. I have seen students that the week before they move, they find out that they're not going to get an apartment on campus and they are scrambling to find something. At this point, if you apply and they cannot guarantee you housing right now, you need to start looking off campus. This is too close to your move date to wait. Okay, I think I caught all the questions except the cost. I'll get to the cost of on-campus versus off-campus living for sure. Okay. All right, let me move on. Oops. I have just a couple more things. Okay. We do have a couple of specific or unique rules of living in Fort Collins and there's a couple of them that I want you to know about immediately upon moving here. One of them, we have a limit in how many unrelated people are allowed to live together. Most people call it U+2. It's technically our occupancy ordinance, but I'm just going to refer to it as U+2. U+2 states that you plus 2 of your unrelated friends, so 3 unrelated adults, you're all allowed to live together, but no more. Okay, let me talk through a couple of nuances within this rule though, because there's a lot of exceptions here. So let's say you're moving here as an individual, you want to live in a house. You're looking at a 4-bedroom house. And you might be like, yeah, so 4 of us could live here, 4 individual adults. That logically makes sense. But the rule in the city of Fort Collins says just because it's 4 bedrooms doesn't mean four adults are allowed to live there. It's you plus 2 of your unrelated friends at most. Let's say you're coming here with kids. The rule is technically 1 adult plus all of their dependents, all of their kids, plus another adult, all of their dependents or kids, plus 1 more adult. So let's say I was a single mom and I've got 2 kids with me. I could live with another single parent and all their kids, and we could have another adult with us. Or let's say I have 2 kids and I'm married. Let's say me and my partner with our kids could live together. And so we're 2 adults with dependents, and then we could have 1 more adult with us. The rule also applies to families. A family unit of any kind, any size, as long as you're related in some way, can live together. So I could live with my husband, my kids, my aunt, my grandma, my cousin, all of us could live together. You just have to be related somehow. This could be birth, marriage, adoption, legal guardianship, blood of some kind, just all related. That's okay. And then our family, we could have 1 more adult with us, an unrelated adult. That's okay. But you can't have a family unit, say, cousins, siblings, children, whatever, and another family unit live together. It's 1 family unit plus 1 adult. So there can't be multiple families with multiple adults and dependents and things like that all living together. Now, let's say you're coming here as an individual and you see those apartment complexes that have 4 and 5 bedrooms, and you're like, well, can 4 and 5 adults live in those? Yes, those units have been exempted. They've been given exemption. They are allowed to have 4 and 5 unrelated people in them. We also have about 30 houses in town that are allowed to have more than 3 unrelated. That list is on our website. I tell people not to bank on that, though. It's very common once a group of renters, let's say 5 people are living in a house and they're allowed to all be there, they tend to pass that house down to other people because, I mean, they found a really unique situation. So they try to kind of keep it within their friend group and pass it down. So I don't recommend you bank on that or count on that for anything. One thing I want to mention about this, people break U+2 all the time. We are an expensive city to live in. And so a lot of students, they might find a 4-bedroom house and they're like, but there's no way we can afford the rent amongst just 3 of us. So we're going to put a 4th person in there. Sometimes the landlord knows about it and the landlord's like, yep, I know you're breaking U+2 and I individually am okay with it. It doesn't mean the city's okay with it. It doesn't mean you're not breaking the rules, but the landlord might be like, it's fine by me. I'm not going to get you in trouble. Or sometimes 3 students will sign a lease and then they just have a 4th student just living with them under the radar. It's called a ghost tenant. None of that is legal by our city standards. And so if you find yourself in violation of U+2, the biggest recommendation I have for you is you want to have a good relationship with your neighbors. because 99% of people that are caught violating U+2, it's because a neighbor called to complain. If your neighbors like you and you're a good neighbor, you are unlikely to get caught. But if your neighbors don't like you and they know you're in violation of U+2, that's one of the things they could use to like get you in trouble and possibly get you to move. So just be a good neighbor and you will likely be okay. You want your neighbors to like you. Okay, the other one I like people to know about as soon as they're moving here is noise. So in Fort Collins, we don't have quiet hours. We do not have specific hours that you have to lower the volume. Our noise ordinance is in effect 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't mean you have to be quiet 24 hours a day, but our noise ordinance, it's called unreasonable noise. And as a city, we're more concerned with what level of noise is reasonable for that time of day, the day of the week, the type of noise. It takes a lot of circumstances into consideration. So let's say you move here and you get a house and you have a front yard and a backyard and you have to mow your lawn. We do have a rule that says you have to mow your lawn. It's got to be, you have to keep your grass at 6 inches or shorter. But let's say you're mowing your lawn. A lawnmower is very loud, but maybe it's Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. A lot of people mow their lawns on the weekend around, and that it's loud, but it's at some point we got to mow. So that's a reasonable time to mow. So it's not an unreasonable level of noise, even though it's loud, because it's a Saturday afternoon. But let's say you wanted to get out there and mow your lawn at midnight. That's now unreasonable. That is too much noise for midnight. You should, our city would say you should not be out there mowing your lawn at midnight. So one thing I know different cultures around the world have different nightlife than we do in the US. I know in some countries it's very common to go to sleep for a few hours, then wake up for a few hours and visit or do chores or something, then go back to sleep. In general, what I want you to think about is nighttime noise or a lot of noise. It might become unreasonable since a lot of folks in the US might be sleeping from, say, let's just say 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I'm not saying those are the exact hours that you need to quiet down, but I do want you thinking about, I guess, like cultural standards or cultural expectations in the US, because that's what's going to be used to determine if your noise is unreasonable. Or maybe you want to have people over to your house. You want to have a gathering. Maybe it's Friday night and it's okay to be a little loud Friday night at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. because most people don't have school the next day. A lot of people don't have work early Saturday morning. So maybe it's okay. But maybe you want to have people over on a Sunday night. And let's say it's 9 or 10 o'clock on Sunday night. That now might be unreasonable because a lot of kids have school the next day and a lot of people have work Monday morning. So those are some things I want you to think about. What's reasonable based on some cultural expectations. I highlight these two specifically because if you get a noise citation or you're found in violation of U+2 and you don't come into compliance within the time frame you're given, the tickets can be huge. The fines can be gigantic. So these are the two that I really just want you to know up front, because it could get you a large citation very early on. The other one that I'll just mention briefly, many of you might be coming in the spring semester. No. So we get snow in Fort Collins. And if you live in a house or a townhome or a condo, and you have a public sidewalk that is next to your property, you are required to shovel the snow off the sidewalk within 24 hours of a snowstorm. Our city wants all of our residents to be able to use the sidewalk safely. And so they have a rule that we have to get out and shovel our sidewalks within 24 hours. There's a time limit on it. If you don't shovel it within 24 hours, the city will send someone out to do it for you, and then they give you the bill. And it could be a couple $100. So that's another one, particularly if you're moving here in the spring, that's an immediate need for you to know. You need to get a shovel and you need to get out there and shovel your sidewalk. If you live in a large apartment complex, they very likely take care of it for you and you don't need to worry about it. It will say in your lease whether it's taken care of for you or not. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about transportation, then I'll take a pause. Okay, so there was a question earlier, is transportation free in town? So we have a public bus system called Transfort. You're going to want to go to a website called ridetransfort.com. That's our public bus system. And yes, our buses are free for all CSU students all the time. They're currently free for everybody in the city. And our city's trying to determine if they can just make it permanently free for everybody. So if you are the student that is coming here, your ID card will always get you on for free. Sorry, your CSU ID card, that will always get you on for free. But if you're bringing a spouse or kids or something like that, for now, they're all free as well. I just don't want you to be surprised in case the city goes back and says, actually, we have to start charging now. But for now, it's free for everyone. So the bus lines, if you're looking to live somewhere and you will not have a car, I recommend that you pull up the all route map on Transfort's website and look where all the buses go, and then look where the apartment complex is relative to the buses. We actually have a bus station, a transit center right here on campus, meaning several buses start and end their bus routes on campus because so many students use our public transportation. So there's a lot of buses that come to campus. So I think there are many options for you to get around town for free. Biking is very popular in Fort Collins. We are the American League of Bicyclists, which is a big national organization that focuses on bike safety. They have rated the university and the city as platinum friendly for bicyclists, which is the highest rating you can get. And so we care a lot about our bike infrastructure. So very common for people to bike, lot of great bike trails. Yeah, you'll want to register your bike with the CSU Police Department, and they'll give you, when you register it, you'll learn about the rules of biking in town. But yeah, biking, great option to get around. And then RamRide, we do have a late night transportation system. If you're out and about on Friday or Saturday night, you can download the RamRide app, and we have a fleet of vehicles that's out to get you around late on Friday and Saturday night, 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. So we're mostly trying to prevent drunk driving, but you can be totally sober and use RamRide. But that's why we're running so late, is because of drunk driving. Okay. I'm going to pause for a second before I go over the advice that the lawyers want me to review with you. I'm just going to pause for a second to see if any questions have come in. Okay. Okay, let me talk about the on-campus versus off-campus housing cost, which one costs more or less. If you're looking at living in an on-campus apartment, and our on-campus apartments, when I say those, we're talking specifically Aggie Village, International House, and University Village. These are our university-owned apartment complexes. If you're looking at those versus off-campus apartments, in general, these university-owned apartment complexes will be a little bit below what our off-campus property managers are charging. If you're coming here and living in a residence hall, it's a little bit harder to compare because your food package is wrapped up into your cost of housing. If you're living in a residence hall, living off campus may definitely be cheaper. The biggest difference is the food. That's the food cost is if you were to live off campus and cook all of your own meals, then yes, it will be cheaper to live off campus versus a residence hall. But sometimes, life gets busy, and it's easier to just run through a drive-through to grab some fast food or just pick up food on your way home. If you do that a lot, then it'll be about the same. then there's no cost difference. But if you're cooking for yourself most of the time, then yes, it'll be cheaper to live off campus in comparison to a residence hall. But on-campus apartments, Aggie Village, International Housing, University Village, those tend to be a little bit cheaper than the off-campus property managers tend to. Some property managers will bring it down, and the newer Aggie Village is a little bit more expensive than the older Aggie Village. So there's some price ranges within the complexes that CSU owns, just like there's ranges in off-campus complexes. But yeah, if you're able to get into an on-campus apartment complex, Aggie Village, International House, or University Village, that's what I recommend for most, actually like all students, international and domestic, to get the apartment experience where you get all the privacy of an apartment, but you're surrounded by CSU resources, you're very close to campus, all that's great. But on-campus apartment complexes are also very popular, and so they almost always have a big waiting list, and not everyone that wants to live there is able to live there because we just don't have enough to offer. So there are students that certainly want to be in an on-campus apartment complex, but have to go off campus because we're full. But if you get into one of them, I would say for 99% of you, take it. It will be great. It will be your best option. Okay, let's talk about some things that Student Legal Services wants me to review with you before you move here. Okay, 1, as you're looking for housing, you should request a live tour. You should be able to request that someone walk through the apartment with you that you will be living in, and have you like on Zoom on their phone or something. It is not guaranteed that they will do it for you. It is possible that they say, well, there's a virtual tour online, that's what I can give you. They don't owe you a virtual tour or a live tour. They don't owe it to you, but you should ask. And if they're refusing, it could be a red flag, that it could be a scam, but again, it also could just be a landlord that is just saying, no, there's an online tour, just do that one, but you should request it. Most property managers will give it to you. Renter's insurance. Almost all property managers will require you to have what's called renter's insurance. Renter's insurance is, let's say there's like a flood or a fire or something happens to the unit, whether it's a house, apartment, doesn't matter. The owner of the property will have insurance to cover the structure, but then your renter's insurance will cover everything inside, your furniture, your belongings, that kind of stuff. Property managers, particularly if they provide you furniture, which is very common. A lot of our apartment complexes provide furniture for the renters. That is one of the most common reasons they require renter's insurance, because they want the furniture they provide you to be covered. Renter's insurance is generally very cheap, like $10 to $20 a month. If you have some other type of insurance here, like if you're bringing a car with you or buying a car here, you'll be required to have car insurance. Whatever company you use for car insurance, you should just call and add a renter's insurance policy. So if you already have an insurance policy of some sort with a company, ask if they offer renter's insurance. That's how most of us in the US do it. We just add it to some other policy we have. If you do not have an insurance policy for some type of physical item that you own. So to be clear, this is separate from health insurance. Health insurance companies, they're there to cover like your body and your well-being. They don't cover, most of them anyways, don't cover like houses and automobiles and things like that. That's 2 different types of insurance companies most of the time. So if you don't have any other type of insurance, you're just going to want to Google renter's insurance, and you'll see all sorts of options pop up. And again, it should be very cheap for you, like $10 or $20 a month. Visitor definition. Okay, so it will be common in your lease that they might define how long a visitor is allowed to be with you. This is, the word visitor here is used different than how it's used in a visitor visa. Some of you might be coming with family and they might be coming on a visitor visa. That visitor visa, it's going to have I'm not an expert on this, but it's going to be something like, oh, this person's allowed in the United States for 3 months or 6 months or a year. Again, I'm not an expert on how visitor visas work. But in your lease, a visitor is just anyone that's staying the night or staying at the place. So a landlord might say, yeah, you're allowed to have visitors, but for no more than 3 nights at a time. The landlord is essentially trying to prevent you from signing a lease and saying, yeah, it's going to be just me. And then you have a bunch of people come live with you or someone else come live with you that isn't on the lease. That's what they're trying to prevent. So if you're moving here, say with a spouse or something, you're going to want to tell your landlord, I have a spouse coming in with me. And that way they're not defined as a visitor on the lease. They're allowed to live there with you. But let's say you have family that flies to the US to visit you, or you have friends in the area that come in to visit you. They're allowed to stay with you if your lease limits it, you know, the 3 nights or 4 nights or a week or whatever. So just know that there's 2 different definitions of visitor. Leases are immediately legally binding. You can apply to live somewhere or let me back up. You can tour a place and then decide you don't want to live there. That's okay. But if you find a place and you're like, oh, I want to live here, so you sign the lease, that lease is the document saying this is my place. Stop looking, because you will not want to go tour somewhere else and then sign a lease there as well, because now you have 2 leases and you can't just get out of the first one. They are immediately legally binding, and the lease will state in there how much it will cost you to get out of the lease. There's 2 common options. One, the landlord might say, yeah, you can get out of the lease early, but it's going to cost you 2 months rent. You know, so if your rent is $1,500 at your apartment, you know, you're talking $3,000 to get out of that lease. It's a lot of money. Or they might say you're not allowed out of the lease until you find someone else to take over your lease. So you have to find someone else to live there that's going to take over your rent for you. And until you find them, you have to keep paying the rent. So it's a lot of money. So once you find somewhere to live and you sign the lease, just stop, just plan to live there. But don't sign the lease until you are for sure confident that it is the place that you want to live. Lease renewals. So some leases, it'll state in there, some leases will say you have to give notice if you plan to continue to live there. Or you have to give, so yeah, it'll say you have to give notice. And the landlord will say, well, if you don't tell me that you're going to live here again, I will assume that you're moving out and your lease will end and you have to go. Or it will say in the lease that unless you tell me you are not living here, I will assume you will continue to live here and I will renew your lease for another year. Neither one of those are good or bad. And it's a mix of what landlords do. So there is no one that's like more common than the other. It's a mix, and neither one is good or bad, but you need to know which it is so that you know as your lease is coming to an end, you need to know whether you need to notify your landlord or not, if you're going to live there or not. I think in general, it is good practice for you to be communicating with your landlord, you know, months in advance of whether you think you're going to stay there or not. Your lease it might give you a timeline. It might say you have to notify me 2 months before the end of the lease, whether you plan to stay here or not, or your lease ends. Or if you don't notify me within 2 months of ending your lease, it automatically renews. There will be some time period that is defined for you. Just know which one you have and make sure you make a plan on talking to your landlord so that you don't lose housing all of a sudden, or you don't end up in another 12-month lease that you didn't want. Okay, I already talked about scams a little bit. Again, myself, Off-Campus Life and Student Legal Services, we're here to try and help you catch scams. The initial posting will be difficult for us, but if you send us communication you're having with the landlord, that's different. Or something that happened a lot last semester, international students were going on a property manager's website and finding like dozens of properties. And then they were sending me the website saying, is this a legitimate company? I can help you there too, to be like, yes, that is a company that I know of in town. The website you're using looks legitimate. So I could help a little bit there. But again, if you find something just like on Facebook Marketplace or something, and it's just the original post, I will be very little help until you start communicating with them. And always do your communication in writing. The last thing I want to mention before I move into questions, guarantor. So in the US, it is very common. I mean, almost all landlords in the city of Fort Collins anyways, and this is common in college towns. A landlord will definitely have some type of financial requirement from you. So you will have to be able to prove that you have enough money or are bringing in enough money monthly to pay the rent. So they'll say something like, you have to make double the cost of rent. Now, some of you, depending on your situation, you might make double the rent. You might say, yeah, between my financial aid, a job I have, and maybe you've got some government backing or something, you might say, yeah, I do make twice the rent. And so you're okay. But many students, let's say the rent is $1,500 a month. Many students don't make $3,000 a month. That, you know, if you're only working part-time, you're getting loans, you know, that's very common for students to not make double the rent. So then what the landlord will require is what's called a guarantor. A guarantor is someone who does make enough money to cover the rent in case you cannot cover the rent. So let's say I was a landlord, I have one rental. Let's say my tenant is like, I can't afford the rent this month. As the landlord, to make sure I get my money, I might say, okay, I'm going to go to your guarantor and say your guarantor needs to pay. So they're the financial backer for you. Most landlords will require that your guarantor has a US credit history. For many of you, you might not have family in the US or anyone that's willing to serve as your guarantor, and because they don't have a US credit history. I should say many of you may not have someone who qualifies to be your guarantor. You might have family or something back home that is happy to financially support you, but they wouldn't qualify as your guarantor because they don't have any type of financial history in the US. So there's a few things that you might need to do. One, you're going to want to look, I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation that if you go to my main website, offcampuslife.colostate.edu, hover over housing, there's a tab that says international students. Those apartment complexes are way more prepared to serve international students. They know many of you are not coming in with guarantors. So they will have different resources for you or options. Some of those options might be like, okay, we'll allow you to not sign with a guarantor, but you have to put twice the security deposit down. A security deposit is something that you usually pay as soon as you sign a lease. So let's say you start looking for housing today and you sign a lease on Monday of next week. It will be very normal that the landlord will require you to pay the security deposit on Monday when you sign the lease. The security deposit does two things. One, it will most likely be equivalent to 1 month's rent. That's how much you should be prepared for your security deposit. Not everyone charges 1 month's rent. It might be less than 1 month's rent, but it's very common for 1 month's rent to be the amount. It is holding money. It's you as the renter saying, here is money showing you I am committed to coming to your rental. So let's say you were to live in this rental that I supposedly own. You are giving me money saying, I am going to come live at your rental. And I'm like, great, I'm taking my rental off the market and I'm going to stop looking for anyone. You have committed, say, $2,000 to me. I know that you're not going to go look around and sign someone else's lease and give them money and give them money. You've given me money. You are committed to me. You are going to move into my rental and pay me the rent every month. Then once you're in, let's say you live there for a year, I'm going to hold on to that $2,000 that you gave me, and I'm going to use it to repair anything that was damaged in my rental while you lived there. Now, I can't use it to repair anything that's considered normal wear and tear. That's the language, normal wear and tear. Normal wear and tear is just normal wear and tear on a house or an apartment complex that just happens with living there. So, for example, let's say my rental has carpet in it. It would be very normal after living there for a year that the carpet is a little bit more worn down the main hallway because you're walking up and down the hallway multiple times a day. That would be very normal. I can't use your security deposit to say, well, I'm going to pay for that carpet. That's not okay. But let's say you're living there and you're moving furniture, and a piece of furniture, you accidentally bang into a wall and now there's like a small hole in the wall. That's not normal wear and tear. That was because of your actions that you kind of banged into the wall. I could use your security deposit to repair that wall when you move out. Ideally, if you take really good care of a place while you live there, ideally you get all of your security deposit back when you move. That's the ideal. But if you cause a lot of damage somewhere, that security deposit is meant to be able to repair that damage. Okay, so those are some examples. So as a landlord might say, well, if you don't have a guarantor, I'll allow you to live here without one, but you have to pay me extra money up front. I need 2 months worth of rent up front, or like twice the security deposit. Some of you might be able to do that. And some of you might be like, gosh, it's already so expensive to live in the US. There's no way I can do that. They might say, okay, you don't have a financial guarantor, like a family member or something, but there are companies that will serve as guarantors for you. They're not cheap. A company might say, yeah, I'll be your guarantor for you, but you're going to pay me 10% of the rent every month. So if your rent is, say, $2,000, the company that's your guarantor is saying you're also paying me $200 a month. So then it becomes $2,200 a month. It's a lot, I know. So, but that's an option. Another option, let's say you're moving here and let's say you maybe know some other international students are already here and they have a house that they're living in. Oftentimes when you live in a house and you do a group lease, oftentimes the landlord only requires one guarantor. So if one of you on the group lease has someone that is willing to be the guarantor for everybody, then you're okay. That's how some international students do it. That's sometimes how our undocumented students do it. It's sometimes how our students that are coming out of the fostering system do it, where they're not in contact with their parents or their family. And so they group up with students and one of them has a guarantor and that person's willing to be the guarantor for everybody. That's another option. If you find yourself in a difficult spot without a guarantor, contact me and we can talk in more depth about your specific situation. Okay, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to look at questions. I got a question. When should we apply for on-campus apartments for fall 2024 for on-campus students? If you are planning to come in fall 24 and you want to live on campus, apply now. They take applications all year, apply now. And then you want to talk with them about when you will know whether you have an on-campus apartment or not. If you apply for on-campus apartments, and let's say it's like March or April, and you still don't know, start looking off campus. I don't want you to wait until the summer to be looking for housing for the fall. There will be options available, but it will be limited. So, yeah, come late March or April. If you don't know if you have an on-campus apartment, start looking off campus. And if you find something off campus that meets your needs, go for that. Maybe an on-campus apartment will become available for you while you're looking off campus. That's great. Go back to on campus, but just don't wait past April. Would Aggie Village provide meal services? Okay, 2 options there. One, you will have a kitchen inside Aggie Village, so you can cook your own meals if you want, or you can buy a meal package to eat inside the residence halls. The way that you buy it, if you're living, so actually you have the option to buy a meal package to eat in the residence halls, regardless if you live on campus or off campus. Here are some differences though. If you live in a residence hall, they will require you to buy a meal package. And those meal packages work where you buy it by how many meals you think you'll eat per week. So you'll say, yeah, I think I'll eat 10 meals per week, 2 meals a day, Monday through Friday, let's say. Maybe you're going to eat 14 meals a week, 2 meals a day in the residence halls every day. maybe it's 21 meals. And you're like, yep, I'm gonna eat 3 meals a day in the residence halls per week. That's how those work. But if you live in an on-campus apartment or anywhere off campus, you can still buy a package to come eat in the residence halls, but you buy them in chunks and they last you the whole year. So you, instead of saying, oh, I think I'll eat 10 meals per week, you'll come in and you'll buy a package, let's say of 50 meals. And then you just use those 50 meals whenever you want throughout the year. And you can buy more if you want more. The people who are eating per week, let's say they buy meals as, let's say they're going to eat 10 meals per week. If at the end of the week they didn't eat all 10 meals, it doesn't roll over for them. They lose the opportunity to access those. But you get a new set of 10 meals for the next week. So it just starts over every week. But off-campus students, or if you're in an on-campus apartment, you just buy a package, let's say 50 meals. Those just roll with you the whole year. They will expire at the end of the academic year. But maybe you eat 1 meal per day for a few days and then you don't go for a couple of weeks because you're cooking for yourself or you're eating in some restaurants or whatever. That's how those work. So it's so I hope that answers your question. Okay. So I hope these security deposits and guarantor requirements are not application for on-campus apartments or on-campus residence halls. Correct my understanding. Yeah, it does work differently on campus, but I don't know everything about that. But if you have concerns about your guarantor and not having a guarantor, on campus will be a way better option for you for sure. Obviously, CSU knows we're recruiting international students. We are way more prepared with the needs that you have coming in from a different country. I don't know what all the exact rules are, but you're right, it is different than off-campus apartments. Will cleaning of the apartment be done by the owner or the cleaners? Almost no off-campus apartment complex or property manager of any kind will provide you regular cleaners, almost none. I would count on being responsible for your own cleaning. On campus, if you live in the residence halls, I know they clean the bathrooms. You're not responsible for cleaning the bathrooms. But off campus, you should just count on being responsible for your own cleaning or for hiring your own cleaning service. But again, that's out of your pocket then. The landlord's not paying for that. Are there legal services on campus that we can use to make sure we understand leases? Okay, yeah. So I'm glad you brought them back up. So student legal services, that is a name of an office. That is a group of attorneys or lawyers they're located in the Laurie Student Center. And they are here for you for any legal questions or any legal advice for free, including reviewing your lease with you. And you should absolutely ask them to review your lease with you before signing the lease. So if you find a house or an apartment complex that you like and you're like, okay, this fits my budget, it's where I want it to be, whatever. Ask for a copy of the lease and then schedule a Zoom meeting. I mean, unless you're already here, you can do it in person, but I'm assuming most of you are still international. Schedule a Zoom meeting and go over the lease with the lawyer. I recommend all students do that, international or domestic, 1000%. Okay, we're about at the end here. I'm not gonna go over, nope, that's all fine. I'm gonna leave this back up here. This is my email. Please feel free to email with any other questions that are coming up. Oh, I'm going to stay online though until 10 o'clock. I'm going to start typing some names of apartment complexes that are near campus for you all to look at that would be easy for you to get to campus via bike, bus, or walking. Or some of them offer their own private shuttle service to get you to campus. I'm going to start typing those, but I'm here for 5 more minutes if any questions come up in the next 5 minutes, and you have my email if you want to email me. Trying to make sure I'm not missing any. Okay, and the estimated cost for living international, I saw pricing for housing. Let's say if I saw 3,500 for sharing a room, is that per semester? I would have to see the advertisement that you're mentioning here, Bobby. The 3,500 for just a room, you certainly won't pay that per month. So yeah, maybe that does sound like that would be more accurate for a semester. If you saw that on like a website that's trying to just kind of help you estimate your cost, I could see why some generic website is just like, yep, estimate about 3,500 for the semester for a 1-bedroom, say inside a 3, 4, 5-bedroom unit. That makes sense. Now, when you go to the apartment complex, the apartment complex themselves, the people actually renting you the place, they will never talk to you in a per semester price. They will always do a per month price. So again, if it's someone's, like a blog or something that someone's writing to help you estimate cost, I could see why they're saying per semester, it costs this much for housing, this much for tuition, etc. I'm sorry, you're catching me. Sorry, I should have thought of that. The residence halls are written differently. So it is possible that it is possible that it's 3,500 for the semester. The residence halls don't use a traditional lease like off-campus private property managers do. It's a different type of contract that they use. So yes, you would not be paying 3,500 per month to have a residence hall room. It does make more sense that would be 3,500 per semester, but do not quote me on that. I don't work for housing and dining services. I don't know all the specifics about on-campus housing. I know bits and pieces, but obviously I serve off-campus students and that's where my expertise is. So, but 3,500 per semester does sound like that's more accurate, but please do not quote me on that. You want to ask housing, and you email them at housing@colostate.edu. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Those on-campus apartments. Yeah. Let me copy them back down. Those are the Aggie Village. I'll type it one more time and highlight it. So on-campus apartments. These are apartments that are owned by CSU. These are Aggie Village, University Village, and International House. Any other apartment complex you're looking at, even if it has Rams in the name, like Rams Village, Rams Point, those are all private companies that are running housing. Certainly they're catering to CSU students. They're here because CSU is here, but they're privately owned. Oh, I just realized I wrote those names. Let me put them for everyone publicly. I realized I just sent them privately. Oh, I wonder if that's what I did earlier. I wonder if I've been typing stuff into the chat and it's been going to private people's messaging. I'm so sorry. And then put an email me for further questions. And if you have any specific questions about off-campus housing, email me. I might be the person to answer them. I might send you over to Student Legal Services. I might bring in Stevie Jorgensen, my property manager liaison. I will find who you need for the help. So thanks all for being with me today.